Today's date is August 16th, 2024. I'm Kelly Zakovic, representing the City of Savannah's Municipal Archive, and I'm interviewing Bettye Berksteiner for the Savannah Community Memory Project. We're conducting this interview at the City of Savannah Adams Complex. So thank you so much for joining us today, and let's just go ahead and get started by telling us your full name.
My name is Bettye Berksteiner.
And what school are you here to share with us about today?
I'm here to share with you about Pearl Smith.
Okay. And when were you born?
December 14, 1935,
And where were you born?
right here in Savannah, Georgia.
Where did you grow up?
My early years were spent on the east side of Savannah, in the neighborhood of on Wright Street, between Waters Avenue and Wheaton Street.
What neighborhood was that called? Do you remember? Does that neighborhood have a name?
Just east side of Savannah.
Okay. And where do you live now?
I now live in Bettye City, which is on the southwest side of Savannah.
And so when did you work at Pearl Smith School?
I worked at Pearl Smith from 1983 to 1991 when it closed.
And what was your job?
I was hired as a first grade teacher. I taught the primary grades for all of my 33 years.
Excuse me. And did you teach anywhere else in the district?
I taught at Haynes Elementary, which was located in West Savannah, Rosna Hill, which is now closed. I taught at Hurdy Elementary, which is also closed. And from Hurdy, I transferred to Pearl Smith.
Okay. And when you were at Pearl Smith, what grades did the school cover?
The school covered kindergarten through sixth grade.
And when students graduated from Pearl Smith, where did they go typically?
Well, they spread it out to different schools according to what their interests were. And so that would be Tompkins High School, Beach High School.
And for students that went to the school, where did they live?
They live in the Carver Village community, which is the west side of Savannah.
So students were basically zoned to go there based on where they lived?
They were assigned to schools in the Savannah area according to where they lived. And we didn't have very much busing at Pearl Smith. In fact, we really didn't have busing because the children lived within walking distance of the school.
So were there any buses or everybody walked?
Everybody walked.
Okay. Who were some other teachers that you remember?
Oh, there was Elfrida White. She was the sixth grade teacher. Linda Burke, Dolores Phoenix, Beverly Drayton. Do you want my names?
As many as you can remember, sure.
Mr. Hawkins, Miss Juanita Fields,
And were there any staff that you remember?
Marilyn Williams was a cafeteria manager, and Alberta Bonds was a librarian. Jacqueline Duncan was the secretary.
And who was the principal while you were there?
Mrs. Catherine Williams Jackson.
She was the principal the entire time you were there?
The entire time I was there. In fact, about it, she and I were acquaintances and college friends. And she became the principal the same year that I joined the faculty there.
And where did you go to college?
Savannah State.
For teaching?
I was not interested in teaching as a student. I had other plans, but at that time we were in the midst of segregation, and there were not many employment opportunities for people of my race. Teaching was the most available occupation. And after being without a job for a few years, my mother persuaded me to try teaching. I did. Had a little stumble here and there getting my certification, but I got my certification. And the longer I taught, the more I was so pleased with the results, and I enjoyed it.
So you were telling me about the principal. What kind of an impact did she make on the school?
She was a terrific leader. She was very kind to the children, kind and understanding with the principal, with the teachers and staff. She got excellent results because of her leadership, her compassion, sometimes strict, but she was a successful principal.
Do you remember who the superintendent was?
Dr. Russo was the superintendent at that time.
Okay. So you've mentioned a lot of names. Were there any important leaders for the school while you were there?
Well, we had sort of like great group chairpersons, and I worked with the first grade teachers, and we would have our grade group meetings and planning sections and that kind of situation. Later on in years, there was a program that was developed by the state, which was special instruction assistance, and that was to help teachers with the students that need the really extra hands. And I was the lead teacher for that particular phase, and we worked with children, kindergarten, first and second grades. And I would go from class to class, and would be able to give the children who were in special needs individual assistance. But on Fridays, we would work with the whole class. Everybody would enjoy the benefit of the extra hands. And that program paralleled Chapter 1. Chapter 1 was a federal program, and the SIA program was the state-funded program. And there was extra monies to do all the extra things that made learning from school into our home, that kind of thing.
So what kind of, special needs did the students have?
Well, all children don't learn at the same level. All children don't have the same ability. Some excel in math, some excel in reading, language arts. So when those weaknesses have been identified through observation, through their actual performance, test scores, and those were the instruments that we use to determine who would get the special needs. And the students who identified below a certain grade level. And so those were the ones who were given the individual help on a daily basis.
Did any students make a big impact on you?
Well, there were those who excelled and who enjoyed certain activities, and then there were others who you knew as a teacher, trained person, and as a mother, I knew that they needed those extra touches and praise and encouragement. And then there were those who, have a tendency to have discipline problems. And after observing those students for a few weeks, you knew that there many problems at home that they were bringing to school with them. They just didn't seem to fit in. They would be upset some days, and they would take out their frustrations on other children or whatever. So, you gave them a little extra time, encouragement.
Did it work?
It worked. It worked. On Fridays, when I was in the classroom with one group of children, I developed centers for reading, math, science, math, and on Fridays they would have opportunities to select which center they wanted to work in for maybe like a half an hour. Then we switch around, and we did all kinds of interesting activities. We had as a part of the math center, we had a story. And this is how we taught money. I taught money and how to make change. And parents gladly provided the items to be sold, to be bought. And that day was called Fantastic Friday. So it was a very interesting experience for me, and I tried to make it interesting for parents as well, and parents as well as children. And when I say interested, at the beginning of the year, I would invite parents in to what I called a reading party, and they would, the children would read to parents and do the word list and things like that. Then at the end toward the end of the year, like perhaps in May, 1st of May, I would have the second reading party, and the parents would come, and the children would read for them and whatever, and they could see the growth that the children had experienced. So those are some of the interesting things that we did at Berksteiner.
And so you mentioned parents. How else were parents involved in the school?
Well, we had an active PTA, and whatever program that children were involved in, if they needed maybe some particular outfit that the parents would always provide, we step right up. We had an excellent physical ed teacher, and she would take the children to her area. But I would go with my children because I wanted to see what they were doing. And that gave me the opportunity to carry on her work or goals when she was not there. So the days that she was not at the school, or the days that she did not work with my children could still carry out what they had learned with her. And at the end of 1 year, she had my children to do a presentation at the PTA meeting for parents to see what the kind of work she was doing with their children. It was a wonderful opportunity.
So parents they were involved, they were paying attention.
They were involved. Anything that I asked my parents to do, I received 100% cooperation.
And what was the PE teacher's name?
Georgia Reynolds was the PE teacher.
So how did the broader community support the school?
I thought that the community, the residents of the community were very proud of Pearl Smith. When I was offered the assignment, I was reluctant, and I answered to the person I directed from the board, Pearl Smith, who wants to go to Pearl Smith? Well, passing by, it was not an attractive school. In fact, in my opinion, it was an architectural disaster. It was 3 distinct buildings, and on rainy days, the kids would have to sort of walk in water to get from one building to the cafeteria, and it just was not inviting. But that was an outward appearance. And when I accepted the job with the new principal coming in, and I moved to the school, it didn't take me very long to adjust. And only in the rainy season or rainy weather was I uncomfortable because my children would get wet going from one building to the cafeteria. But that was not a daily activity or a daily condition. And on the whole, I would consider my experience with the community, the parents, the children, the faculty members, and the support that we got from downtown. It made a wonderful experience for me.
So would you say that there were adequate resources for the teachers and the students there then?
I would say yes, that we had maybe not as much as resources were available to other schools and other settings, but basically I thought that we had what was absolutely necessary. And a program like programs such as Chapter 1 and the SIA program, they brought in a lot of the extras that was needed. So I thought that the children fed off very well. Of course, it wasn't as well equipped as some of the other schools. We realized that, but we worked well with what we had.
What were some of those differences?
Well, maybe didn't have all of the fancy art materials and you know those kinds of things. You didn't have real like science labs, but some science materials were available, and you had to pull in your own resources to provide some of these extras. But that part of the course, a resource for teachers. saw to that the children were not neglected.
So why would you say that Pearl Smith School is important? Why or would you say that Pearl Smith School is important to Savannah?
Well, it served, you know, at the time when Pearl Smith was in vogue, I mean, you know, was really used, it provided a need for that community. And as I said previously, we were in the midst of segregation, and much of what the white schools and those children enjoyed and were provided was not provided for our children, such as bus transportation, school bus transportation. And with Pearl Smith being the neighborhood school, our children have a place where they were welcome. And we did the best we could with what we had and what we could provide on our own. I distinctly remember having to make decorations for my class, such as for the bulletin boards and just making the room a drive there. And when I had the experience of leaving an all-black school and going to Hurdy, to Hurdy Elementary, which is located on Skidaway Road, I really saw the difference. Sometimes when you don't have, and you don't know, then, well, this is what it is. But once you have been exposed, and you can see what the differences really were. And moving to Hurdy, going to Hurdy as a first grade teacher, I saw the real differences. And it was disturbing. I did not participate in the actual integration, such as boycotting and demonstrating at night and, you know, those kinds of activities. But I made up my mind when I went to Hurdy that would be my personal contribution. It was not easy. I was one of two black teachers in a white setting, no black children at all. And when the Board of Education decided that they were going to comply with the federal orders, and I was selected to go, I put on my little battle shoes and my vest and my hat, made my heart fall, and said, well, this is for me to do, and this is what I did. It wasn't easy. It was not easy, but I succeeded.
What years were you at Hurdy?
I was at Hurdy from 1970 until 83. And I taught children with all kinds of abilities and disabilities. And at that time, the principal made sure that the small children or children who were easy to learn went to certain teachers. And then those of us who were struggling to integrate, we got those that were difficult. So I have taught children with all kinds of abilities and disabilities. But through it all, we succeeded. We succeeded.
Do you want to share more about that journey or?
Well, it was a learning experience for me.
So you were telling me about the principal. What kind of an impact did she make on the school? Mm-hmm.
She was a terrific leader, She was very kind to the children, kind and understanding with the principal, with the teachers and staff. She got excellent results because of her leadership, her compassion, sometimes strict, but she was a successful principal.
Do you remember who the superintendent was?
Dr. Russo was was the superintendent at that time.
Okay. So you mentioned a lot of names. Were there any important leaders for the school while you were there?
Well, we had sort of like grade group chairpersons, and I worked with the first grade teachers, and we would have our grade group meetings and planning sections and that kind of situation. Later on in years, there was a program that was developed by the state, which was special instruction assistance, and that was to help teachers with the students that needed the really extra hands. And I was the lead teacher for that particular phase, and we worked with children, kindergarten, first and second grades, and I would go from class to class and would be able to give the children who were in special needs individual assistance. But on Fridays, we would work with the whole class. Everybody would enjoy the benefit of the extra hands. And that program paralleled Chapter 1. Chapter 1 was the federal program, and the SIA program was the state-funded program. And there was extra monies to do all the extra things that made learning fun, school enjoyable, that kind of thing.
So what kind of special needs did the students have?
Well, they were all children don't learn at the same level. All children don't have the same abilities. Some excel in math, some excel in reading, language arts. So when those weaknesses had been identified through observation, through their actual performance, test scores, and that those were the instruments that we used to determine who would get the special needs. And the students who identified fell below a certain grade level. And so those were the ones who were given the individual help on a daily basis.
Did any students make a big impact on you?
Well, there were those who excelled and who enjoyed certain activities, and then there were others who you knew as a teacher, trained person, and as a mother, I knew that they needed those extra touches and praise and encouragement. And then there were those who, have a tendency to have discipline problems. And after observing those students for a few weeks, you knew that there may be problems at home that they were bringing to school with them. They just didn't seem to fit in. They would be upset some days, and they would take out their frustrations on other children and whatever. So, you gave them a little extra time, a little extra encouragement.
Did it work?
It worked. It worked. On Fridays, when I was in the classroom with one group of children, I developed centers for reading, math, science, math, and on Fridays they would have opportunities to select which center they wanted to work in for maybe like a half an hour, then we'd switch around. And we did all kinds of interesting activities. We had, and as a part of the math center, we had a store. And this is how we taught money. I taught money and how to make change. And parents gladly provided the items to be sold, to be bought. And that day was called Fantastic Friday. So it was a very interesting experience for me, and I tried to make it interesting for parents as well, and parents as well as children. And when I say interested, at the beginning of the year, I would invite the parents in to what I called a reading party, and they would, the children would read for the parents and do the word list and things like that. Then at the end of, toward the end of the year, like perhaps in May, 1st of May, I would have the second reading party, and the parents would come, and the children would read for them and whatever, and they could see the growth that the children had experienced. So those were some of the interesting things that we did at Pearl Smith.
And so you mentioned parents. How else were parents involved in the school?
Well, we had an active PTA, and whatever program their children were involved in, if they needed maybe some particular outfit that the parents would always provide, they stepped right up. We had an excellent physical ed teacher, and she would take the children to her area, but I would go with my children because I wanted to see what they were doing. And that gave me the opportunity to carry on her work or goals when she was not there. So the days that she was not at the school, or the days that she did not work with my children could still carry out what they had learned with her. And at the end of one year, she had my children to do a presentation for at the PTA meeting for parents to see what the kind of work she was doing with their children. It was a wonderful opportunity.
So parents they were involved. They were paying attention.
They were involved. Anything that I asked my parents to do, I received 100% cooperation.
And what was the PE teacher's name?
Georgetta Reynolds was the PE teacher.
So how did the broader community support the school?
I thought that the community, the residents of the community were very proud of Pearl Smith. When I was offered the assignment, I was reluctant, and my answer to the personnel director from the board, Pearl Smith, who wants to go to Pearl Smith? Well, passing by it was not an attractive school. In fact, in my opinion, it was an architectural disaster. It was 3 distinct buildings, and on rainy days, the kids would have to sort of walk in water to get from one building to the cafeteria. and it just was not inviting. But that was an outward appearance. And when I accepted the job with the new principal coming in, and I'm new to the school, it didn't take me very long to adjust. And only in the rainy season or rainy weather was I uncomfortable because my children's feet would get wet going from one building to the cafeteria. But that was not a daily activity or a daily condition. And on the whole, I would count or consider my experience with the community, the parents, the children, the faculty member, and the support that we got from downtown. It made a wonderful experience for me.
So would you say that there were adequate resources for the teachers and the students there then?
I would say yes, that we had maybe not as much as resources were available to other schools and other settings, but basically I thought that we had what was absolutely necessary. And a program like programs such as Chapter 1 and the SIA program, they brought in a lot of the extras that was needed. So I thought that the children fed off very well. Of course, it wasn't as well equipped as some of the other schools. We realized that, but we worked well with what we had.
What were some of those differences?
Well, we didn't have all of the fancy art materials and you know those kind of things. We didn't have real like science labs, but some science materials were available, and you had to pull on your own resources to provide some of these extras, But that was like part of the course. Resourceful teachers saw to it that their children were not neglected.
So why would you say that Pearl Smith School is important?
Repeat.
Would you say that Pearl Smith School is important to Savannah?
Well, it served, at the time when Pearl Smith was in vogue, was really used. It provided a need for that community. And as I said previously, we were in the midst of segregation. And much of what the white schools and those children enjoyed and were provided was not provided for our children, such as bus transportation, school bus transportation. And with Pearl Smith being the neighborhood school, our children had a place where they were welcomed. And we did the best we could with what we had and what we could provide on our own. I distinctly remember having to make decorations for my class, such as for the bulletin boards and just making the room attractive. And when I had the experience of leaving an all-black school and going to Hurdy, to Hurdy Elementary, which is located on Skidaway Road, I really saw the difference. Sometimes when you don't have and you don't know, then, well, this is what it is. But once you have been exposed and you can see what the differences really were. And moving to Hurdy, going to Hurdy, as a first grade teacher, I saw the real differences, and it was disturbing. I did not participate in the actual integration, such as boycotting and demonstrating at night and those kind of activities. But I made up my mind when I went to Hertie that would be my personal contribution. It was not easy. I was one of 2 black teachers in a white setting, no black children at all. And when the Board of Education decided that they were going to comply with the order, federal orders, and I was selected to go, well, I put on my little battle shoes and my vest and my hat, made my heart strong, and said, well, this is for me to do, and this is what I did. It wasn't easy. It was not easy, but I succeeded.
What years were you at Hertie?
I was at Hertie from 1970 until 83. And I taught children with all kinds of abilities and disabilities. And at that time, the principal made sure that the smaller children, or children who were easy to learn, went to certain teachers. And then those of us who were struggling to integrate, we got those that were difficult. So I have taught children with all kinds of abilities and disabilities. But through it all, we succeeded. We succeeded.
Do you want to share more about that journey or?
Well, it was a learning experience for me, and it helped me to understand that people are people and children are children, regardless to race, creed, or color. And as the adult in the situation, it was my responsibility to help these children to grow and develop, not so much at their level, but to encourage them to become the best person, the best learner that they could be. And I think that I made a wonderful contribution in that area. Today I meet so many young people, and they remember me and remember my name and whatever. Mm-hmm. And I have to stop and say, now what's your name? And who are you? And that kind of thing. And I look back on my journey, and I have no regrets that I went into teaching. That was my calling, but I didn't know it at the time. And with my mother's encouragement and the road being what it was for me, I had 33 wonderful years. And every day was not a smooth day. I would come home a lot of times. I would be so discouraged and whatnot. But you get to yourself and think about. I would think about, am I doing a good work? Is this what is intended for me to do? And I worked 30 years. I worked in Richmond, South Carolina. That was my first experience. Then I came to Savannah, and I worked at the schools that I have named. So it's been a good journey for me.
So can I ask you some more specific questions about Pearl Smith School?
Yes.
Okay. So you talked a little bit about the layout of the school. Is there anything else you'd like to share about the actual physical building?
Well, the building was kept clean. We had a female custodian, and we had a male custodian. And I was one of those particular teachers who wanted everything spotless for my children. And there were some days when I would bring my own cleaning supplies from home, and I would clean the bathrooms or whatever needed to be done, because I wanted my children to have a sanitary situation. I enjoyed working at Pearl Smith because I enjoyed the teachers and the parents and the children above all else. I had a set of twin girls at one time, and the only way I could tell them apart was one had a mole on her face. Otherwise, I could not tell them apart. And to this day, they are still a lovely set of twins.
How many students did you have in a class typically?
We had gotten down from like 30 or 35 students to about 23 or 24. And that was our average class size. Then we were fortunate enough to move into having part-time teaching aides. And they would come maybe like a half a day every day, or whatever way the principal set up the schedule. So that was a plus.
So can you tell us about a typical school day? Like, what time did it start? When did it end? Did they go to recess? Things like that?
Well, the school day started at 8:30. 8:30. And when I was in school, we would have daily devotions. I mean, really, really devotions. By the time I got to be a teacher, that was really like a no-no. But when my children came in, and as we were getting ready for our day, we would have a class meeting. And in this class meeting, we would sing a couple of songs. I taught my children different poems. And one of them that we did every morning was, "When I wake and see the light, I thank him for the quiet of the night. I thank him for the blessings of the day, for home, for school, for work and play." Well, him could be anybody you wanted him to be. Didn't talk about God, didn't talk about any form of deity, but they knew what it was all about. When we got ready to go to lunch, after all the morning work, the reading and the math and that kind of thing, those kind of important frameworks for the day, every day, and they washed up for lunch, we would line up and everybody would be quiet for a few minutes, and that was preparing and giving thanks for the food that they were about to receive. Never talked about who him was, but him was present. He was present, and that is what the way I framed my children's work. We had PE every day. The days that the PE teacher took them out, like I said, I would go with her. I'd follow her and those children. And in the afternoons, we would have the social studies or science. Then we would go to the centers, and they would pick the center or choose the center that they wanted to go to. But it wasn't the same one every day. They had to rotate. So that was the gist of how I framed my schedule for the children. And most of them enjoyed it. Now, I had some problems, but I'm not going to try to paint a picture that it was perfect, because it was not perfect. Many times the children brought their problems to school with them. And if you had any kind of care for the children, you would realize, well, this child is a little off today. Let me see what's going on. So you would pull them next to you and you sit next to them or you rub their shoulders or whatever to give them a little comfort and to let you know that I care.
Mm-hmm. I wish I had you as a teacher. Was there a dress code at the school?
Before I stopped teaching, the dress code was in demand, and I think if I remember correctly, each school could select the kind of uniform they wanted them to have. And it was usually like little khaki pants or shirts and the t-shirts and that kind of thing. But I think our principal was very understanding, and she selected, or the faculty selected, the colors and the kind of outfit that would not be a hardship on parents. So there was a dress code, you know, before I stopped teaching. Mm-hmm.
What was the color? Do you remember?
I think there was navy blue. It was khaki pants or skirts. The girls also had plaid skirts, and I think the plain tops. They could like a polo shirt or blouse, you know, that simple kind of thing. And I believe the school colors were navy blue and white, or navy and yellow, something of that sort. That's been a long time.
Can you tell us about the cafeteria and what kind of food the kids ate?
Well, we had no choice in that at all. The children had no choice. Whatever was served, the menu, whatever the menu was, that's what was served. And the menus were planned from downtown, and they had the workers, the food service workers would come out and would check the preparation, the condition of the cafeteria, and if if the menus were really being followed, and those kind of supervisory tasks. I thought that the food was well prepared at Pearl Smith. Every day was not a day that I liked, but every day was a day that I ate. I went to lunch with my children. Our principal was thoughtful enough, Ms. Jackson was thoughtful enough to allow the teachers to have sort of like a duty-free lunch, and the aides would supervise the children. I went to lunch with my children because I thought that I needed to model for them to learn to enjoy healthy food, whether it was something we knew about or not. And we would have sometimes build the language lessons around what we had eaten and where the food came from, and pointed it out on the maps and whatever. So it wasn't that I'm just going to gobble this food down, and because this is what I have to do, and if I don't eat this food, then I'm going to be hungry. But develop an enjoyment for the food, where it came from, and that kind of thing. And we have done field trips to local grocery stores, and the children would have their little money to buy certain little things with, So education is more than just sitting at a desk, opening a book, reading that, whether you understood it or not. It just has to be an experience where the children are developing an appreciation for everything, whether they liked it, wanted to do it or not. but this is how you learn. You have to enjoy, you have to participate in everything that's about you, the good things out of it.
Did the school have a library?
We had a library, and the librarian was a seasoned teacher, and then, you know, she went into the library of science, and it was available to us. My children took advantage of it, and I know sometimes I don't want to use the word demand, but the requests that I would make, I know they would say, well, here she comes again. But my feeling was that she was there to serve the children, and I saw too that my children got their share for service.
Was there a playground?
There was a playground. Wasn't the equipment out there was not perhaps the latest or the best, but it was what we had. And when my children would go for PE or go for recess, it wasn't a wild, free fall kind of thing. They may not have known it, but I always had a plan and what we were going to do and what was to be the outcome. And they enjoyed going, and I enjoyed going with them. I didn't send them. I took them just like, and my attitude toward my students was the same attitude that I had with my birth children. I didn't send my birth children. I took my birth children. The same way with the children, my students. I didn't send them. I took them and I went with them.
Did the school have any like clubs or sports teams or anything?
I'm not too sure about that because my little children, they were not, my first graders were not a part of that.
Did the school have a mascot?
Not that I remember.
So let's see. Can you remember any significant events that happened while you were at the school?
That was a program that was a PE program that was promoted by, I'm going to say President Bush, but that might not have been the president, but I'm going to say President Bush. And if it was a part of the PE program. And because my children were so active and cooperative, they each received a little certificate. What I'm sure the PE teacher probably duplicated it so that each child got sort of like an award, and with the president's signature on it. And my class was selected to do the PTA program under the direction of the PE instructor. And this is one time I distinctly remember parents participating, they cooperating. They needed to have white shorts, and I think it was a navy blue t-shirt, and I purchased them sweatbands for their arms and the headbands. So they were really, my class was really decked out, really decked out. And that was a special event. The other special event was the school participating in May Day at Massey. That was I don't believe they even have that anymore. But it was like the first Friday in May, and all the schools gathered in the park that was across the street from Massey School. They participated in that. We had an excellent music teacher, and She taught them songs and had like a little spring concert for the parents. So those were some things that I distinctly remember.
I know you said you were there when the school closed, but how would you say that school changed while you were there up until the end?
Well, we met all of the basic requirements, and the Southern Association of Education, I think that was the name of it, the SACS program, and they came in and they evaluated our school, and we passed with flying colors, even though it was an architectural disaster. But we met all of the requirements that we needed to have met. So I feel that the mere fact that we were able to stay intact, everything going well each day, no major problems or disasters that I remember. So I feel that we did an excellent job with the physical building that we had, and maybe some other shortcomings, but they were not real hindrances.
So could you tell us a little bit about when the school closed? How that came about?
Well, we were not in on the actual reasoning behind who were planning and that kind of thing. We were not a part of that. But we did have the opportunity to have a teacher representative on the committee, and I was the teacher representative. I attended some of the meetings and whatever. I went to, the first time I visited Garrison, and we were under the impression that all the students from Pearl Smith would be going to Garrison, and we were quite excited. And the first time that I went to Garrison, they were doing the foundation, and I stepped over the ditches, not ditches, but the trenches that had been where that was going to be used to prepare the foundation for the school. So I actually saw the school being built. I was told that I would be the lead teacher for the magnet program because Garrison was planned, or we were told that it was going to be a biological science school. And I was selected to go with a group of teachers from Savannah, various schools, to visit the school system in North Carolina. And I went quite excited. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot and had just ideas just popping out. And after I visited at school, I just got a little nagging. Are you really prepared to be the lead teacher? Are you really prepared? Do you really know enough about science to take on this job? Because I was a person who gave it my all. There was nothing too hard, too difficult, or whatever for me to do if I thought it was going to benefit the children. And we went through a lot of sort of emotional stress because we knew some of the teachers would not be joining us at Garrison and that kind of thing. As it turned out, the powers to be decided that all of the children from Pearl Smith would be going to Garrison. And I don't know how they drew the lines, I don't know their rationale for it because I was just a teacher. But they sent some of the children from Pearlsmith to Garrison. Others went to some other schools, and the school that the majority of those who were not selected to go to Garrison went to the school, Gould, went to Gould. So they had to be bused from Carver Village out on the south side. And some of the parents were very, very upset about it. And they thought that they had been mistreated. And it really was that kind. They had the right to have that feeling because they were told that all of the children would be going. And that did not happen. It was a sad experience, but then that was one side of it. Then the other side, there was excitement about going to this brand new school with all of this equipment, state of the art, the latest this and that and the other. And I was one of those who was selected to go to Garrison. And at that time, my husband was alive, and he was also an educator. And I started fretting about the fact and doubting myself, should I attempt to be the lead teacher for a science program at magnet school? And he, told me, follow your heart, follow your mind. And I went to my principal and I told Catherine Jackson, and I told her I didn't think I was able. And she was just, really, really upset. And I just said, I'm not gonna do it because I'm not comfortable within my own skin. We made the transition. It was exciting. And the the closing of Pearlsmith was sad, but we tried to give each person, each student, a copy of what we call the last edition. It was a little newspaper. I had written a grant and I submitted it to the board for some extra money to do some activities for the closing of Pearlsmith. And I was given this grant. The money came through. And we did that little newspaper, and we had it printed at the Herald. And that was a keepsake for the children. So there was joy on one hand and sadness on the other. Moving to Garrison was really, really exciting. I loved being at Garrison. I was the first teacher to retire from Garrison because I had put my time in. And my parents were living at the time. And I often think about that was one of the best decisions that I had ever made, because that was the last year that my dad lived, and we were able to do a lot of things that I had not done my adult life. So I moved away from trying to be the lead teacher for the science program, for the magnet program, because I didn't feel comfortable within my own skin. But we did a lot of science activities because it was a science school. And we were there, we made it the first year, but there was no curriculum planned. And my principal asked me that summer, would I lead a group of teachers into writing a curriculum for the magnet program, and we did. We published it and everything. So that was one of my, big achievements, and that's how I felt. And Garrison, for several years, was a science school, but I understand now that it has changed, just like an art school. Well, you know, things do change. But I had a wonderful experience for Pearl Smith. I have wonderful memories from that school. And like I mentioned earlier, the person who was over personnel, when he offered me the job at Pearl Smith, and I said, Pearl Smith, who wants to go to Pearl Smith? And he pointed out the plus. He said, well, it'll be closer to your home. You won't have quite a big fuel bill, you know, car bill. He said that the people, I said, it's a nice neighborhood. The people out there are homeowners. They have everything that other communities have. You have a community where parents work well with the school. He named all the pluses. And I thought about it, I said, yeah, you're right. I not ever regretted going to Pearl Smith. And it has rounded out my profession, you know, so Pearl Smith was a good deal for me.
And what year did you retire finally?
I retired in 1991.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to share with us about Pearl Smith? You shared so much.
Well, it's just for the students who went to Pearl Smith and the people who taught at Pearl Smith years and years before I got there. They have lasting memory, and I am so happy that this project is going on because Pearl Smith needs to be preserved.
And what would you like to see for the site in the future?
I'm not quite sure. I know there's been a lot of what I'm going to say talk in the community about different plans and different projects for that area. So I really don't know, but I would like to, whatever takes place, I would like for the community to be affected in a very positive way. I don't want to see that community, well, I'm going to say destroyed by plans that others may have. I was just so surprised at how things have changed, even in this area where we're sitting now, this location. I had no idea that all of this was over here. So it is an indication to me that there are other big plans in the future, but I just would like to see the Carl Village community in this area maintain some of the original, of the long time area that has been. You know, I just don't want it to be has been. I want it to thrive, and I want to be alive. I want to be vibrant, you know. But then we have to progress.
So that's my questions about the school. Would you like a break, Ring? Would you like to keep talking about Liberty City and Camp Park? Would you like a break? Maybe put a pin in it for today? Or...
Well, let me get a sip of water.
All right, so this is part 2 of our interview with Bettye, and she's going to share with us a little bit about Camp Park. So would you like to share with us how some of your memories of Camp Park?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm a native Savannah, and born and reared in Savannah. And for years, until I was 9 years old, we lived on the east side of Savannah. I went to Paulson Street School, which is now no longer in existence, but Hubert School is in that neighborhood. And my parents built our home in the Can Park area, Can Park community. And when we moved there in 1946, there were many, excuse me, vacant lots and spaces. And the school that, the elementary school that many of the students or residents of Can Park attended was Hodge Elementary, it was located at the corner of West Victory Drive and Hopkins Street. And it is now no longer in existence in that spot because the old Hodge was torn down and is now located in further south. Excuse me. I witnessed the building or the construction of Beach High School. And as we call Beach the pride of Savannah. Of course, it was segregated. And I think every student who had the opportunity of going to Beach High took personal pride in the fact that we were students at the brand new school. And I think at that time it was probably the largest and the latest of all the schools in Savannah. And so much pride, we took so much pride in the school that we were not allowed to be on the front of the school during the school day. And it was just those kind of little things, little actions that all of the students participated in. At that time, Hopkins Street was an unpaved street. And, you know, Savannah being Savannah, certain times of the year was just a mud hole. But again, we took pride in Beach High School. We lived in a 5-room, I guess people would call it a cottage, that Daddy built. And my daddy and my mother were young, progressive and aggressive parents, and hard workers. My mother at that time was a domestic worker, but Mama believed in education, and she took every kind of course and class that was offered. She became a master beautician, and she became a baker and could decorate cakes, and she took an upholstery class, you name it. And my daddy was a hard worker with dreams. After we got upper size, we moved away. We moved to Connecticut for about 2 or 3 years, and we came back home. We didn't like the North. We wanted to come home. And I was at Savannah State in school, and my parents always stressed work, strong work ethic. I had my first Social Security paying job in New York City at the age of 16, and went to New York every year to work and save money to do for yourself. They always emphasize have your own money. And my parents, I watched them work side by side and accumulate some wealth, never rich, but some wealth. And then I want to correct that. Not rich in cents, in the terms of dollars and cents, but worth but rich in life skills and being kindness to others and living according to the Bible. Good Christian people, and I was raised in that way. We had good neighbors, people that we went to school with and are still, those who are still alive, still friendly with them to this day. And my daddy was always ambitious, and he decided that he was going to construct another building, a full unit apartment house next to our family home. And in that building, he was going to have a business. And laundry mats were fairly new, something that had just, there weren't too many in Savannah. And my daddy built one there. And that was a gathering place for neighbors. And they had a lot of friends, and their friends would come over in taxis and to do their laundry and to socialize and sit at mom and daddy's table, eat, and get caught up or catch up on what was going on in the city and that kind of thing. That was the atmosphere in our home. And my daddy improved the family home, and he built a beauty shop, an area for mom to have a beauty shop in that home. And as I've just stated, people would come and they would be there in the mornings, be there for lunch, and our daddy would, when he would get off from work, he would take them back to their house. It was just a sort of gathering place, you know. Across the street from our house was a laundry, and that was not a gathering place, but it was a busy place. People would bring their clothes to be dry cleaned and that kind of thing. There were a couple of little convenience stores in that neighborhood around the corner from us, and then about 3 or 4 blocks down another street, there were churches, a couple of churches in the community, and all the streets were unpaved. So it was sort of almost like a mud hole, you know, out there. But that was our neighborhood. We took pride in our homes, and we had gardens, flower gardens, as well as vegetable gardens, you know. A few people had chickens, but that was not, I don't know if it was not approved, or they just didn't bother. I think it's just didn't bother, you know. To this day, I have neighbors that I grew up with.
So can I follow up on a couple details? So what were your parents' names?
My parents' names were James and Lucy West. My dad died at the age of 70. And my mother lived until she was 93. And she drove a car until she couldn't drive any longer. She did anything that she thought that she wanted to do. And I think that's where I get that attitude from. If I can conceive it, then I do believe I can do it.
Did you say what street your house was on?
Oh, we lived at, the address was 904 West 48th Street. It was right on the corner of Stevens, 2 blocks from Canton Park. We would go to Canton Park, but we weren't allowed to stay for so long. My parents were strict about our coming in and our going.
Mm-hmm. Did the laundromat or the beauty shop have a name?
Not really. Not really. I guess maybe you would call it the West Laundromat or something like that, but didn't have a real name that I remember, that I remember.
Do you remember the dry cleaner across the street's name?
Stevens. Stevens Laundry. But I never saw anything in writing, like with a name or anything like that. I don't remember seeing that.
Where did your family attend church?
Well, in my early years, we attended Bethel AME Church, which was located on East Broad and Gwinnett Street for years. That was my mother's church, and we went to church with her. My dad was Catholic, but we did not go to church with him. And when I was in 7th grade, I had a homeroom teacher, and she was Catholic. And I think she influenced my joining the Catholic Church. My dad didn't object, but he didn't, say, well, no, the children are gonna come to church, come to Mass with me. And for years, from the time I was, I guess maybe 10, maybe 11, when I joined the Catholic Church, I was a practicing Catholic until 1999, something like that. And I had a change in my beliefs. Still religious, still Christian, but I had matured. And there were just some questions that I had, no answers, as far as the Catholic Church was concerned. I don't criticize anyone who is in that denomination. There's some good and bad in all of them. And my children, I have three children. My children were born and raised in the Catholic Church. I have a son who is very, very devoted to it. After my husband died and we had our grandchildren, I joined the United Methodist Church, and that's where I am now, participating in the United Methodist Church. But we were mixed religion.
Were there any notable leaders in Ken Park or neighbors that you remember?
Right off at this minute, I can't remember any, like outstanding members. But I do remember my meeting W.W. Law at Beach High School, and the NACP was really getting started here in Savannah, and he would come over. He had I think just left the Army, and he would come over to Beach High School and visit with us as students, and we would have after lunch, we were allowed to have what was called a quiet hour. And after you had your lunch, we could go to the auditorium and listen to music or stories or whatever. Sort of like a rest period or recess. And some kids would, just be outside or whatever. But I liked that quiet hour, and I would go after lunch. And he would be in there talking to us about the NAACP and organizing the youth group for the NAACP. Now, I don't know, and I don't think it was against the law, because I'm sure that the principal and the teachers would not have condoned that. But he was, it was sort of like an awakening. And he would talk about, well, I didn't know it at the time, but it was immigration. I did not know what it was. And I would go home and I would talk to my mom about it, and Daddy too. And they were members of the NAACP. And Mr. Law was sort of a radical in his day. And this particular day, he was on fire. He was just talking about what all was gonna happen and how it was gonna happen. It would be up to the young people, and he was just going on. It frightened me. And when he said, and we're gonna march by night, and he was just going on, and the more he talked, the more frightened I became. So I stopped going to that part. If I found, to that recess period, if I found out he was going to be there, I wouldn't go. So my mother said to me one day, "You don't talk about Mr. Law anymore. He doesn't come over to school." I said, "Yeah, he comes." She said, "You're not going to the meeting?" I said, "No." "Why?" I said, "Because Mama," he said, "we're gonna march by night." I said, "I'm not marching anywhere by night." She said, "Well, he doesn't mean it exactly like that." But I sort of backed off. It took me all of those years to realize what he was about. Several years, I should say. And it took me a long time to see and to understand it was going to take a man or people with his fire to break down the walls of segregation. So in a way, I was a first-hand example of how you want to do something, but you're afraid to do it. You know, it was one of those situations. Even when integration was wide open and they were marching by night and rioting and all the rest of it. By that time I was married and had children. And my daddy and my husband didn't want the women folk in our family to be a part of that. They said, "We'll march for you all. We'll carry the torches for you all. We don't want you out there in the midst of that." But we did our part. We did not, whatever stores were being boycotted and whatever, we took a part in it. I remember when my oldest child was born, and he needed some shoes because he was trying to learn to walk. And I slipped. I went downtown, and at that time we didn't have a car, and I rode the bus. And I got off the bus and I looked, to see who was looking, if there was anybody. And I went in the store to buy my baby a pair of shoes. And the fellow who took me to the prom when I was in high school, he saw me. He waited till I came out. And did he get on me. You're not supposed to be going in the stores. And there's people like you who will keep us from getting anywhere. And he followed me from that shoe store all the way down Broaden Street, all the way over to the bargain corner on Bay Street, just fussing and carrying on with me because I was breaking the boycott. And I thought about it. At that time, I was a really feisty, fiery little person. And, I was holding my own. But that really woke me up to what I needed to do. And on the other tape that we did, and I said that I went to Hurley School, and that was my contribution to the effort of ending segregation They was very quiet, but it took a lot for me to go and do that. The first day that I was going to Hertie, it rained the night before. And as I was getting in my car, I slid and fell on my knees. And when I got up, I was muddy and dirty. My stockings were torn, and I was bleeding. And I started to go back into my house. And something said to me, if you go back in that house, you'll never go to Hertie. I turned around and I went to Hertie. When I got there, like I said, I was bloody. Stockings were torn. And the custodial staff was there waiting on me. And when I got there that morning and parked and was going into the building, they were lined up. There was 3 of them. And they greeted me and they said, "Good morning, Miss Berksteiner, welcome to Hertie." Not one white person greeted me. It was just like I was a big piece of poison or something. And they put me in a little room. And I think I had about 12 or 15 children. And they were all rejects. It wasn't that they couldn't learn, but some of them had behavior problems. Some of them had been absent too many days, and just different reasons. But I got in there, and with those little children, they were a grade between, they had been in 1st grade, but they had not achieved enough to go to the full 2nd grade. So I had them in this little room, and I taught them with all my heart, and they learned. And when we finished reading series, maybe like in April of that year, and I went to the principal and I told her that I had finished with the children, everybody had passed, and I was ready for the next set of books to put them in. And she was doing different things in her office and whatever, and I'm sitting there waiting for her to answer me. She finally turned around and she said, "Well, I don't have a 2nd set of books for you, for those children." She said, "I'm gonna tell you the truth. When I interviewed you to come over here, because Bernard Hirschberg thought that you would be a good mix, I didn't expect you to stay." She said, "I didn't think you would be here a week. You have proved me wrong." So she found some materials for me, and we finished up that year. But it was not an easy year. It was not an easy year at all. One incident I remember so well, the secretary was a lovely woman, and she had gone out for lunch. And when she came back to the office, this little girl that was in my class, she had to go to the restroom, and I allowed her to go to the restroom. And when she came back to the class, she opened the door and came in. Her head was outside, but her body was in. So I said, "Come on in, what are you looking at?" She said, "Them." I said, "Well, them who? Them." So I went to see every child and every teacher, but my class and me were outside. They had lined up on either side of the hall, and every child standing out there had a gift for the secretary. It was her birthday. They sang happy birthday to her, and my children were not included. Oh, that broke my heart. I went home that day, I was so sad. My husband said, "Well, what is wrong today?" Because he knew I was having a hard time, and I told him what happened. I cried. He said, "But if you're crying about a birthday gift for her," I said, "Yeah, but everybody but me and my children." And my little 2-month-old baby, we wrapped her up, and my 2 sons, and we got in the car, and he took me to Sears. And I didn't know what to buy her. That's because I'm afraid she's gonna throw it away. She probably doesn't want it. So he said, well, I brought you, the store is here. And I bought her a box of decorative soap, little sample things. The next day, when I went to school, I had the children to make paper, gift paper, wrapped in paper. And when it got dry, we wrapped the present, and we went over to the office, and we sang happy birthday to her and gave her that. And that made me feel better, made the kids feel better. She came to me later, she said, I want to tell you something. She said, I felt so bad when I realized that you all were not out there with everybody else. And she said, I want you to know I had nothing to do with it. I said, I realized that. She said, but I will remember this always, how you went the extra mile to include the children, wish me a happy birthday. So, you know, I have some sort of bitter memories, but I'm okay. I have survived.
How long did it take for you to get accepted at Hardy, or were you ever treated equitably?
As a part of the faculty?
Yeah.
Some things I was able to overcome and some things I was not. But I went there with the determination that I'm here now. And at that time, Georgia Day was big thing. I don't know if you're familiar with that, okay? Mm-hmm. I heard it was a big thing. And the principal was, I think she was a member of something. I think they called it the Daughters of the Confederacy or some such organization like that. And they were all excited about just Georgia Day Parade and what all they were gonna do and what all was gonna happen. Nobody said anything to me or whatever. And I didn't have much money. But I went to a fabric store on the way home from school, and I bought some fabric that was called muslin. That was the cheapest cloth you probably could buy. And I bought that muslin, and I went home, and my husband looked after the children. I sat down, I sat at the machine, and I made a colonial dress, a long dress, and everything in the apron. And I made the little cap, I think they called it a mob cap. I made all of that. And the day that they were gonna be in the parade, I stepped in the school with my outfit. And one of the ladies, the teacher told me, oh, I didn't know you were gonna take a part. I said, I'm a part of the faculty. And me and my kids, we got in and we marched with them in that parade. And there were other little incidences too. But you know what? I kept going. Mm-hmm. I kept going. And I just feel that if you are about, in any situation, if you're about the right thing, you will get the strength to complete it.
Okay, so the last thing I wanted to ask you about was Liberty City, because you live in Liberty City now. How long have you lived in Liberty City?
We have been in Liberty City about 53 years.
Oh my goodness. Is there anything about Liberty City that you'd like to share about with us?
Okay, well, we had 3 children, and we were living, my husband and I were living on 45th Street, down the street from Cannon Park. Mm-hmm. And we struggled and worked and whatever and got things together to build a house for our children, make a home. We had the home, you know, but didn't have the house. And I just thought I was gonna leave this world because I need a house for my children. And we built the house from the ground up. I was so adamant about building a house that I ordered a set of house plans through the mail. I had all kind of house plan books, and I would just sit and dream and whatever. And I found this house that I liked. and I ordered the plans. I guess I had those plans maybe 3 years before we were able to do the house. And my husband said, when we got enough money together to get a lot, and my husband said, well, I don't want a lot where people are gonna be so close on us, like where we are now. A little, we call them alley, a little alley on both sides of the house. And you can stand one place on one house and then lean over and, you know, touch the other house. That's how close together they were. He didn't want that. So he set up. And then I have land in the Sandfly. I said, where's your land in Sandfly? I know we had been married all these years. I had never heard that before. And he went on to tell me this land that was next door to his mother and father. I said, no, I'm not going out there. Well, you found a lot for us, and I got out and I rode and I found a lot in Liberty City. So we paid for that, and then we started saving again for this house. And we had to end up getting a company to build a house for us. But it was the house that I wanted. And when we went there, I had the initial conference with the company, the construction company, and Bossman gave us a book of plans. And you know, I found the very plan that I had purchased. And but in the house book, there were 3 fronts that could be built on the house. Well, we selected the one, you know, that we have. And then the next step was, after they took all the information, finances and everything, the next step was to go see the model house. And it was somewhere, it wasn't Skillery Island, but out that way. And I loved the house, you know, because that was what I wanted. And when we were making a decision, I told my husband, I said, you know, I'm not ungrateful. I said, but that house is so little. I said, I just wanted a little bit bigger house. And well, we decided and talked about the fact that we didn't have enough money to get anything much bigger and whatever. And when they started building our house, I would go out there every day. Every day I would put my kids in the car, and I had special shoes that I kept in the car because it would be so muddy with no paved streets out there. The only paved street was Liberty Parkway. But I would get out there and walk to see what they were doing. And when we moved out there that June, about 4 or 5 months after they started building the house, and it was muddy, it was just awful. But we have enjoyed being there, and we raised our 3 children. My thing is, we didn't feel that we had to go on the south side because the neighborhoods were, you know, were kind of open here because of immigration law. We had to move out there to give our children a different life. We felt that we could do it right within that kind of community, up and coming, that Liberty City was. And now there's hardly an empty lot in Liberty City has developed that much, you know. I have enjoyed living out there. Mm-hmm.
What street do you live on?
Vassar Street. It's really at the, well, depends on which way you're traveling. If you're traveling south down Liberty Parkway, it's the 13th block. I've got it in my head. Mm-hmm. If you're traveling north on Liberty Parkway, it's the 3rd Street. My children have made good friends, and like we have lifelong friends out there and neighbors, you know, so I feel that I'm quite blessed.
Are there any Liberty City residents we should know about?
Well, there's Clifton Jones. He was a councilman, but he is now up in age and disabled. His wife was on the, let's see, what is it called? The voter registration. I think she was on that board. There are no, as far as I'm concerned, just really distinguished, outstanding distinguished people. Robbie Robertson, you all have a picture of him, the lawyer that was killed. He lived down the street from me when that happened. I'm trying to think of who else. As far as I know, that's about it. There are just a couple of churches out there. There's one private school, I think it's Emmanuel Christian. It's out there, but it's just a neighborhood of residences mostly. At one time, there was one store on Liberty Parkway. There's no commercial building. We have the Liberty City Community Center. But other than that, it's just a neighborhood of residences.
So is there anything else that you'd like to share about with Cannon Park, Liberty Park, any of your schools before we wrap up?
I think that's it. I think I've talked you out.
Yeah, this is amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much.
I would like to see a little bit.